9 experienced hikers walked into the Ural Mountains of Russia in January 1959. None of them came back alive. But here's the part that keeps investigators up at night. When the bodies were finally found, their tent had been sliced open from the inside. They had fled into the freezing darkness without boots, without coats, without any explanation. One was missing her eyes. Another was missing her tongue. And the Soviet government classified the entire investigation for decades, officially listing the cause of death as an unknown compelling force. What happened on that mountain? No one has ever been able to say for certain. Let's go back to the beginning. It was early 1959. The Soviet Union was in the thick of the Cold War, and a group of 10 young hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk had gathered with a very specific goal in mind. They wanted to complete a Category 3 expedition, the highest difficulty level in Soviet hiking classifications. To earn that certification, they needed to traverse the northern Ural Mountains in the dead of winter. A brutal, unforgiving landscape. But these were not amateurs. Igor Dyatlov was their leader, 23 years old, already respected as a skilled and cautious organizer. He had built his own radio equipment as a teenager. He was methodical, experienced, and his friends trusted him completely. The group included several veterans of difficult expeditions, Zinaida Kolmogorova, bright and beloved, known for her warmth on the trail. Rustem Slobodin, a mechanical engineer with a passion for the outdoors. Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonishenko, close friends who always brought a guitar to keep spirits high. And Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest in the group at 38, a World War II veteran who had joined almost at the last minute. He was still something of a stranger to the others. Looking back, that detail would seem oddly significant. Of course, at the time, they had no idea what was about to happen. The group set out from Sverdlovsk on January 23rd. There were originally 10 of them, but one member, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back early due to a knee injury. He said goodbye to his friends, watched them disappear into the wilderness, and returned home. He would be the only one of those 10 to see another spring. The plan was straightforward. Trek north through the mountains, summit a peak the locals called a Tor 10, and return in roughly 3 weeks. Before heading into the backcountry, Dyatlov told the university sports club to expect a telegram from him no later than February 12th. If no message arrived by then, they should assume something had gone wrong. February 12th came and went. No telegram. The university waited a few more days. Delays on expeditions were not unusual. But by February 20th, alarm bells were ringing. Search parties were organized and dispatched into the mountains. Volunteers, student groups, soldiers, and eventually military aircraft all joined the effort. The Ural wilderness is vast and unforgiving. Days passed without a trace. Then on February 26th, searchers found the tent. It was on the eastern slope of a mountain called Kolatsyakal. In the Mansi language, the indigenous people of the region, that name means something chilling. It means dead mountain. The tent was half buried in snow and badly damaged. But it was how the damage had been done that stopped the search team cold. The canvas had been cut and torn open from the inside. Someone had used a knife to slash their way out of their own shelter. Inside the tent, the group's belongings were all still there. Boots, warm coats, food, cameras, journals. Everything they would have needed to survive the night was left behind. The hikers had fled into minus 30-degree temperatures with almost nothing. No logical explanation for why anyone would do this willingly presented itself. The searchers began following footprints in the snow. The tracks led down the slope, away from the tent, toward the tree line about a mile below. Some of the prints suggested people walking. Others suggested people stumbling. A few suggested people who could barely stand. Then near the edge of the forest, they found the first 2 bodies. Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonishenko were found at the base of a large Siberian cedar tree. They were barefoot, wearing only underwear. The branches of the cedar had been broken up to about 5 meters high, evidence that someone had desperately climbed the tree, perhaps to look for something or to escape something below. A small fire had been attempted nearby. The remains of it were pathetically small, not nearly enough to survive the night. Within days, 3 more bodies were found partway up the slope, between the cedar and the tent. Igor Dyatlov, Rustem Slobodin, and Zinaida Kolmogorova. Their positions suggested they had been trying to crawl back toward the tent, toward warmth, toward survival. They had not made it. Dyatlov was found on his back, one arm wrapped around a small tree, as if he had collapsed mid-climb. Investigators had 5 bodies. They believed the deaths were the result of hypothermia. Tragic, yes. Mysterious, certainly. The question of why they left the tent still had no answer. But at least the cause of death seemed explainable. Then they found the remaining 4. It took until May. The snow had to melt enough to reveal what lay beneath. The 4 remaining hikers, Ludmila Dubinina, Alexander Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolovatov, and Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, were found in a ravine about 75 meters from the cedar tree, buried under several meters of snow. And this is where the case stopped making any sense at all. Thibault-Brignol had massive skull fractures, not the kind caused by a fall, the kind caused by a violent blow of enormous force. Dubinina and Zolotaryov both had catastrophic chest injuries, multiple broken ribs on both sides, internal hemorrhaging. The Soviet medical examiner compared the force required to the kind seen in high-speed car crashes. But there were no external wounds, no bruising on the skin. Whatever had crushed them from the inside had done so without leaving a mark on the outside. And then there was Ludmila Dubinina's face. Her tongue was missing. Her eyes were missing. The soft tissue of her face had been removed. Investigators initially suggested these could be explained by natural decomposition in the stream where her body lay. But the other bodies in the same location did not show the same damage. Some investigators and researchers would never fully accept that explanation. The Soviet government launched a formal investigation. The lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, examined every piece of evidence with careful attention. He was troubled by something else he found. The clothing of the deceased showed elevated levels of radioactive contamination. Not astronomical levels, but present. Unexplained. Where had it come from? The official investigation concluded in May 1959. The conclusion was both specific and vague. The deaths were attributed to a spontaneous, unknown compelling force, which the hikers were unable to overcome. The files were sealed and classified. The families were told very little. And the mountain, Dead Mountain, went back to its silence. But investigators would later discover that things were far more complicated. Ivanov himself, decades later after the Soviet Union had collapsed and he could speak more freely, gave an interview in which he admitted he had been pressured to close the case quickly. He said he believed something extraordinary had occurred on that slope. He hinted at lights in the sky, at unusual phenomena. He did not use the word he seemed to be dancing around, but he came close. And he was not alone. In the weeks around the Dyatlov group's deaths, multiple independent witnesses, including meteorologists, other hikers, and military personnel, reported seeing strange glowing orbs floating over the northern Ural Mountains at night. These were logged in official journals. They were not rumors. The Soviet military was actively investigating similar phenomena across the region during the same period. So what actually happened? In the decades since, there have been many theories. Some are grounded in science, others push the boundaries of what we think we know. The most widely accepted explanation for years was a katabatic wind event, a sudden, powerful rush of dense cold air rushing down the mountain slope. These can happen with terrifying speed and force, and they can create the sensation of an overwhelming pressure that panics even experienced hikers. Under this theory, the group heard or felt something alarming in the night, perhaps a strange sound, perhaps the tent beginning to collapse under sudden wind or snow, and made the desperate decision to evacuate the tent immediately, cutting their way out rather than risking being buried. Once outside in the darkness and the storm, they became disoriented. They could not see the tent behind them. Hypothermia set in quickly, impairing their judgment. The group separated. Some tried to build a fire. Others tried to return to the tent. None succeeded. The severe injuries to the four in the ravine, under this theory, are explained by a snow slab avalanche, a sudden shift in packed snow that could have fallen on them with the exact kind of force described by the medical examiner. Snow avalanches are known to produce internal crush injuries without external bruising. The ravine where they were found is consistent with this. A 2019 scientific study and a more detailed 2021 Swiss simulation study both concluded that a small-scale avalanche combined with the extreme cold could plausibly account for all of the injuries and the deaths. The cases for missing tissue were attributed to scavenger activity and water decomposition in the stream. This explanation is logical. It is supported by physics and by atmospheric science. Many researchers consider it the most probable answer. But not everyone is satisfied. The infrasound theory offers a different perspective. Infrasound, sound waves below the range of human hearing, can be produced by wind moving across certain mountain terrain. At certain frequencies, infrasound causes panic, disorientation, irrational behavior, and even hallucinations. Some researchers believe the Dyatlov group may have been hit by a natural infrasound event that caused them to experience overwhelming terror with no rational source, something that made them feel as though the tent itself was the threat, that whatever was inside it had to be escaped at any cost. Under this theory, the hikers were not running from an avalanche. They were running from a feeling, a primal, overwhelming dread created by the landscape itself. There are those who believe the Soviet military was involved, that the group stumbled upon a secret weapons test, perhaps a parachute mine, a type of weapon that detonates at altitude and creates a pressure wave that causes internal injuries without external damage. Under this theory, the radioactive contamination on the clothing, the bizarre injuries, and the classified investigation all point in one direction. The Soviet government knew what had happened, and they buried it. Some of the classified documents released in the post-Soviet years contain references to military activity in the region around the time of the deaths. They are heavily redacted. They do not confirm this theory, but they do not cleanly rule it out either. And then, of course, there are the theories that are harder to explain away with science and politics. The glowing orbs seen by multiple witnesses. The strange orange glow that other hikers reportedly saw over Dead Mountain that same week. The elevated radiation. Semyon Zolotaryov, the mysterious older man who joined the group at the last minute and who was found uniquely among all the victims with a camera still around his neck, as if he had been trying to photograph something. His film was developed. The images were too dark and damaged to make out clearly. What little could be seen appeared to show only blurry shapes and indistinct light. Whatever Zolotaryov saw in those final hours, he took the image with him. In 2019, Russian investigators officially reopened the Dyatlov case. After a year of work, they announced their conclusion. A snow avalanche was responsible. Families of the victims disputed this. Researchers disputed this. The debate continued. And it will keep continuing. Because here's the truth about the Dyatlov Pass incident, the thing that makes it impossible to fully let go. Every individual piece of the puzzle, taken alone, can be explained. The severe injuries might be an avalanche. The missing soft tissue might be decomposition. The radiation might be contamination from camping equipment or medical gauze. The strange lights might be military flares or atmospheric phenomena. But all of it together? 9 experienced hikers fleeing a tent they had to cut open from the inside. No shoes, no coats, in minus 30-degree temperatures. Some crawling toward the tent, some crawling away from it. Internal crush injuries with no external wounds. Missing eyes, missing tongue, radiation on the clothing, classified files, military cover-ups, glowing lights in the sky. The sum of all these things does not point neatly at any single cause. Igor Dyatlov was careful. He was methodical. He had led expeditions before and brought everyone home safely. He would not have panicked without reason. He would not have led his group out into the night to die without something overwhelming and terrifying driving them to it. What was it? What did they see? What did they hear? What force came down from that mountain in the darkness and scattered 9 experienced, capable human beings across the snow like leaves in a winter storm? Dead Mountain is still there, still silent, still cold, and it has never answered. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most investigated, most debated, and most deeply unsettling mysteries in modern history. Not because we have no answers, but because we have too many, and none of them are quite enough. 9 people walked into those mountains in January of 1959. Only one came home. Yuri Yudin, the man who turned back with a bad knee, lived until 2013. He spent decades advocating for the truth about what happened to his friends. He never accepted the official answers. He died without ever getting the full story. And somewhere in the Ural Mountains, on a slope that still bears the name of those who died there, Dead Mountain waits, keeping whatever secrets it holds beneath its ice.